Right, let's do a video. This is number 11 in a series I've been doing for a while called Massive Societal Change. And the tie-in with my usual topic being global heating is that global heating and all the associated problems that come with it, which are manifold, right? It's a polycrisis, see my earlier videos, are going to lead to massive societal change. And I can even say that, and people don't even know what that means. Because everyone has a conception of what societal change ought to look like based upon their own set of issues that they would like to see addressed by society. Animal rights, species extinction, appropriate lifestyles, veganism, whatever, religious choice, gay, straight, trans rights, a whole bunch of things, AI rights, a whole bunch of things, depending on where your head is currently at. And some people, as I've discovered over the years, are almost obsessively focused on like one thing or another thing. So if you asked 20 people what they thought massive societal change would be, you'd probably get 30 answers. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to wade into that. I've been wading into it for a while now. This is the 11th in this series. It's an irregular series. I don't do it a lot. I'll make a playlist so you can go back and look at the other ones, binge watch my massive societal change. So my idea of massive societal change is not some social cause or other. I don't have social causes. In fact, I think all your social causes are going to evaporate very quickly. When society finds itself without global industrialized civilization, the society is going to find that it doesn't have time to obsess about what everyone thinks is societal change. So before I get too far into this, the kind of content I create here on YouTube is not popular with the algorithm. So in an effort to try and address that or reverse that, you could subscribe to the channel or leave a like and or leave a comment, and the algorithm picks up on all that stuff and says maybe this stuff is interesting. If you engage with it, then it'll think this is something to show people. So thank you in advance. Now another order of business, but it is tied into the topic. I wrote a novel, link in the description, called It Was 100 Days. That's the title. It Was 100 Days. Oh, I have it right here. Show off my magnum opus, an end of civilization novel. Okay, and there's actually a preface. Can I read this? Not a preface, just like a subtitle. Being a parable about the end of the era of fossil fuels and our journey out of darkness, by me. So, so what is this? Some people are saying this is a really nice book. I mean, it looks nice. Hardback is a real legit hardback. The pages don't fall out. Nice paper, nice font, and I'm pretty proud of it. It talks about, there's the front and there's the back. There you go. It's a legit book. All right. So find it on Amazon, and the reason I'm mentioning it is one, I'd like to move copies of the book, but two, this is what happens in the book, Massive Societal Change. The book itself is handled like a diaries journal type of thing, and there are 100 days in it, and that's 100 entries. Some of them are quite short, some of them are really long, and there's also interspersed in it chapter-like passages that are really essays. So I wrote the book, and of course all the content is me, and all the essays are actually my thoughts. So one of the things that the people in the book, and there's not any dialogue, it's just diary entries. One of the things that people run into is they have to very quickly reorganize themselves around key principles of, it's a multivariate problem. It's survival, but that's like a big umbrella. Under that are many tasks you have to accomplish to survive. And everyone is going to have to find some way that they can pull. What are you adept at? What are your interests? What do you think needs to be done? So everyone, without a lot of guidance, in fact, it's, 20, 30 days into the story of how these people are pulling together a village before they even select leadership. So it's very distributed. It's very much individualistic. It's people looking at the set of problems and saying, okay, I can tackle this, I can tackle that. I have some input here, I have some ideas here, I have some tools, I have some seeds, I have a medical background, and everyone just kind of allows themselves to get engaged. And it works. It does. And that's how it should work, and that's how it would work. People would decide what they can do, and then the impetus and the motivation to do something is individual and collective survival. And you don't have to think collective, we can't do anything collectively. Okay, if people can't do things collectively, then they die. So let's not worry about those people. And those people aren't even mentioned in the book. It's just recognized that people who can't figure it out aren't in the story. There's no chapter about the people that don't figure it out. There is a chapter, actually a couple of mentions, of the cannibal zombies. But that's because in the process of not figuring it out, they began to prey upon the villages. Well, they're not quite villages, but they're groups of people that you can kind of see are heading towards village. They start to prey upon these people, and these people don't put up with it. So the cannibal zombies collide with the people who are organized. The cannibal zombies are not organized, and they become a gag. They become a joke. No drama. No, the road, no, Mad Max. They just become a joke because they can't figure it out. So the book is about how people figure it out. And one of the things, to the topic, stop rambling, Cougar, one of the things they figure out, and this will probably be highly controversial, so apologies in advance. Sorry, not sorry. Really, I'm not apologizing. That's tongue-in-cheek apology. Sorry, not sorry. One of the things that they figure out right away is that men and women are different. That they have different interests. They have different expectations, even of themselves. That when it comes time for a man to organize himself around the tasks of group survival, he will probably veer in a particular direction. And a woman, and there's different types of women. There's older women, there's women with children, there's married and unmarried women, and then there's young women. All these women will, and the same applies to men too, of course. They will take different responsibilities based on their interests. A woman who has her own children will be managing her children and possibly even other children. Because that's where her locus of concern is. She wants to make sure that her children are okay. She wants to make sure that other women's children are okay. All the women with children are suddenly focused on children. And it's not too hard for them to do that because they can't be focused on their career because they don't have one anymore. And the men can't be focused on their career because they don't have one anymore. Civilization has collapsed. And the people who can't figure that out, and they're still clinging to their mindset, they're not in the story. Because they can't even, on day one, or maybe by day 7 or so, they can't make the logical and cultural jump away from, well, this is what I want. This is what I was promised. I got a degree. I have student loans. I have a mortgage. To leap from that to this other thing, which is that none of that matters now. Don't worry about your student loan. Don't worry about your mortgage. You survive. That's it. There is no money. There is no jobs. There's no careers. This is my usual litany. There's no driving. There's no flying. There's no movement of goods. There's no movement of money, finances, and there's no jobs. That's it. That's the 5 key things that happen in a collapse of civilization. Those are the things you lose. And when you can't have those things, then a whole bunch of other things fall apart. So men and women are no longer bound to a previous set of expectations, and they are able to consider and then adopt a different set of expectations. And their expectations are suddenly unhinged from all this propagandistic capture that we've all had to live with for our entire lives from the time we're 3 years old and we begin figuring out the world. And people start asking us, what are you going to be when you grow up? And the answer to the question for a child, what are you going to be when you grow up? The answer ought to be something like alive. That seems like a good start. I will be an adult when I grow up. And, I will be probably married. Hopefully I'll have children of my own. I'll live in a village. I'll have responsibilities. I will have, lots of people that I love and know, inside and outside my family. And, when I'm an adult, I'll know what I have to do. I'll have the tools to do it, and I will be successful doing that. No, I can't expect an 8-year-old to have that answer. Not as such. But the very question, what are you going to be when you grow up, is actually out the window in a collapse of civilization. It's not a question. What are you going to be when you grow up? The answer to that is change screens. The answer to that used to be, what are you going to be when you grow up? Whatever my dad is. If you're a boy, and if you're a girl, I'm going to be like my mom. And what are you going to do? How are you going to live your life? And it'll be, well, I'm a boy. So my father cuts wood and he brings the wood in, and we also have to manage animals, and then we sow the fields, and we harvest the fields, and we work with the village. We work with the other men to defend the village and keep the fences up and the walls up, and build fences to keep the animals in. And sometimes we have to travel to the other towns for barter and trade, and sometimes we come back with other people, right? Young men may go to another town and come back with a wife. So these are the things that you do when you grow up. You don't have a career because there's no driving, there's no flying, there's no movement of goods, there's no movement of money, and there's no jobs, right? So what are you going to be when you grow up? Is you're going to be part of a village. So I have this picture of this village. This is a mythical village, of course. There's nothing like this. There's some medieval elements here. I think you can see them. You see how the women are dressed, and so this is a cute picture. I kind of like it. It's warm and fuzzy. But you may have already noticed that there's something here that doesn't belong. In fact, there's a lot of things here that don't belong. And this is a modern village. And I don't feel badly that the construction methods in this future village, because that's what this is, are similar to medieval construction methods, because there was a reason why people built homes the way they did, because they had to use local materials. So you have half timbering, you have field stone walls, you have wattle and daub exteriors and interiors. You have thatch roofs, because thatch was the leftover straw from the wheat harvest or the oats or rye. So you had lots of straw around, so you used it to thatch the roofs. Maybe some roofs have slate, but slate's more expensive. Some roofs, to be more permanent, like for a church or something, or a town hall, might have lead. Lead is cheap, and it lasts a long time. So there's different ways you could roof that, but all has to be local materials. You could do cedar shingles, right? But straw is free, so you do thatch. And but also, in addition to just really being forced to adopt building methods that use local materials and also local building constructions, these houses will have very few nails. They might have very little electricity in the walls, more like maybe in the year 1900 or 1890. The amount of electricity was not real common. So you'd have maybe one service drop and 2 or 3 outlets in the entire house, maybe one in the kitchen, one in the living room, and maybe an overhead light with a string, right? The type. So these would be, they look medieval, but I'm kind of off topic here, but it's not, okay? Because this is where this whole discussion is going. It looks traditional, but it's not. It could fool you. But when you walk through this town, you would understand it's the future. There's overhead electrical wires. That means there's a source of electrical energy somewhere. Some of these electrical wires might even be local telephone service. Local, maybe a couple of villages share a telephone exchange, possibly. The technology for that is real simple. Look, Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone. That was a dude in a shop invented the telephone. And then a couple of other dudes connected telephones to an exchange. Then a couple of other dudes managed the telephone exchange. And then few people had telephones. And maybe there was a shared community line. So one telephone line comes into 6 or 8 houses, and even if they each have a telephone, they can only use the line one at a time. Sometimes you pick up the phone and you're ready to ring the number or ring the exchange. You don't really dial the number because that'd be electronic exchange. But you ring up the operator and you ask to be connected. But there's always someone on the phone, okay? Because it's a shared line. So you hang up and you come back in 10, 20 minutes. You try it again, right? And if there's somebody who's hogging the line, you know who it is because you recognize their voice. You go to their house and say, hey, get off the phone. I need to make a call. Okay? So you manage these things in your community and you have a telephone exchange. Maybe you have electricity. What's your generator? Well, maybe it's solar panels. Maybe it's a wind turbine. Or maybe you've gone even further back and you've found some running water and you've created a mill using a water wheel, except in this case it's not grinding wheat into flour, it's turning a generator. And where'd you get the generator? Well, you can scour the landscape, you can find those kind of things. There might even be some light engineering still left in the future. Now, there might even be a shop right here in this town that makes motors, hand winds them, makes everything by hand. The first motors were made by hand. What do you think was going on? The first telephones were made by hand. How do you think that happened? Seriously, we can do this if we know how. And in the collapse of civilization, you're going to have to. And this is where gender relations start to come in. If women want to accept normal female occupations, like, sorry to say this, but bearing children, right? If they accept that and they say, okay, this is how I'm going to contribute to the betterment of my community, is by having children and adding strong sons and daughters to the workforce, if you would, okay, and people who can learn skills and deploy their skills. That's my job as a woman. I accept that. Now, she would have to accept that. I don't think anybody in the village is going to come along and say, oh, well, they used to, of course. The older women would go to the houses and say, aren't you old enough to be married, missy? Oh, now you're married, so when are you going to have babies? Oh, now you've had a baby. That's great. Don't wait too long to have the next one. You know, there's a lot of pressure and people don't like it. They have other plans, but they can't have too many other plans, can they? Because they're not driving, they're not flying, they're not buying and moving goods around. There's no financial system and there's no jobs. So you're going to have to integrate. You're going to have to figure out how you're going to contribute to this community. And if you're a man and there's material needs in the community, like, it'd be nice if we had some electricity. We still have some electrical, kitchen appliances. We've got mixers. We've got laundry machines, right? It'd be nice if we had some water, some plumbing. Can't you men figure that out? Because that's the conversation. We've got washers and dryers, but we don't have electricity and we don't have plumbing and we don't have anywhere for the water to go or to come from, and we haven't figured it out. Can't you men figure that out? We got the machines. Give us the things we need to make them work. And the women don't even care what it takes to make them work. They're like, I've got the machine. I'd like to use it and make my life easier. Figure it out. And the women just toss that to the men. And the men are like, okay, no, fine. Challenge accepted. And then they go and they figure it out. And they do the dangerous work. They put the poles in the ground. They climb the poles. They run the wires. They're dealing with electricity. They're being careful. Sometimes they die, but they don't do that too often, right? A couple of deaths, and then you figure it out. So this is an inevitable consequence of no driving, no flying, no movement of goods, no money, and no jobs. People are going to have to figure it out. That's it. And when they figure it out, They are going to, for various reasons, all of which are intrinsically recognized internally per person and externally by the community, to contribute. And women will contribute according to their concerns and their needs. And men will contribute according to their capabilities and interests and the needs of the community. That's just how it is. You can imagine other ways that it could be, but you'd be wrong. Because that's how it is. And what do I know? And I'm just the manosphere and I'm talking out of my ass. It's like, no. If you're a female, maybe you can figure out how to run electrical wire. But if you're a female with children, you're not going to have time for that. And if you're an elder daughter of a family, then as the eldest daughter, you're going to have to help run the household. You're going to be cooking and cleaning and tending to the children and maybe even teaching the youngest and managing the animals and managing the kitchen garden and a bunch of other things. Because that's what your mother's going to want you to do. Because the mother is saying, look, I have to cook the meals. This is a lot of work for me. Daughter, you're going to help. And besides which, these are good skills for you to learn. You'll be more valuable in marriage. The community will consider you a major asset. And they're not going to be trying to get rid of you because you're so full of yourself or whatever the problems are with women who don't want to contribute to the continuity of the community. Because that, of course, will be a problem. That will be a problem. There'll be a lot of people who just have their head up their ass. My mother had a career and I'm going to have a career. It's like, okay, like what? How are you going to manage that? I don't know. I'm going to go to college. What college? There aren't any. Well, I'm going to learn something. I'll learn a trade. I'll learn how to be a barrel maker. Okay, well, that's perfectly legit. We even have a cooper right here in town. So why don't you go connect yourself with the cooper or the blacksmith or the fuller or the miller or whoever, carpenter, right? And say, hey, I'm here to learn. I'm here to help. I want to do things. Yes, I'm a girl, but it doesn't matter, right? Because, 2 eyes, 2 ears, 3.5 pounds of brain, opposable thumbs. We can do this. And it could easily be that the blacksmith will take a woman in and teach her how to do smithing. And then you have a lady blacksmith. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But the same person who says, well, I would rather be an actuary. Oh, actually, I'd rather be a project manager. I'd actually rather be mayor of this village. I'd rather be mayor because I'd rather just sit around and point people in the different directions. It's like, we don't need you to do that. We have a council of elders, and they're actually elders. They're old people who are arthritic and, don't move around real good, aren't as strong as they used to be, but they're wise and they're smart. So we picked the eldest to be the council of elders. We got 4 or 5 people who do that, and they're doing a great job. We don't need a mayor. We don't need a project manager. So find something else to do with your time, sweetie, because that's not on the table for you. So if people want to be all highfalutin and imagine in their sorry state that yes, I can still drive, I can fly, I can project manage. I'm going to have a career. I'm going to have a 401k and an IRA, and I'm going to have my all my life figured out for me. And that's not going to work for us because we don't need what you're offering, and we don't have a university, and we don't really even value people with a university education. We value people who can plant seeds and heal injuries and birth children and deal with animals. And we need veterinarians more than anything. And we also need people who are strong, who carry water and carry wood and butcher cattle and all the things, right? That's what we need. So the needs of the village, and this comes back to the needs of survival, which is both an individual problem. Do you have food? Do you have water? Do you have shelter? That's you. But also the community. Does the community have all the tools necessary for survival? And then, can the community attain some of the vestiges of modernity, as in this picture? Does it make any sense to have a cell phone tower? And if your community happens to be located where there's a cell phone tower, will it work at all for the purposes of making cell phone calls? Maybe it does, possibly. or maybe it does something else for you. I don't know. It's in the picture. It's just in there because I wanted some signs of modernity. But the electricity, the indoor plumbing, the wiring in the walls, the electric lights, a generator somewhere, solar power, wind turbines, all these things. All this stuff is totally on the table for, excuse me, for our little village. And if the village looks medieval, it's because that's local building methodology. That's one of the ways you can do it. Local materials. And if what I'm describing sounds medieval, the people must conform to gender norms and expectations and all that sounds medieval. Well, here's what people have to do. People have to look at, okay, so for the first 100 days, maybe even the first 10,000 days, which is 27 years, people will already be adults and have to adapt their expectations to the new reality. And they'll also have already built in hobbies, skills, and interests that they can then extend to the survival requirement of the village. But later, like at the end of that period, at the end of 27 years, we'll have generational change. There will be people born into this village who, in the process of being raised up, will get a different message than they got a generation before. The boys and the girls will get a completely different message. They won't be told, you have to go to university, you have to get good grades, you have to get a job afterwards, you have to have a career, you must fund your own 401k, buy your own car, have your own house, and then start worrying about relationships and maybe worry about children. And if you're a woman, actually you're expected to juggle all this stuff. And if you're a man, you're supposed to trust that the system's going to work for you somehow, somewhere. There's a woman who's juggling all these chainsaws so that you can, pick her and marry her and then support her juggling chainsaws, and now you're also juggling chainsaws? Okay, all that's over. All that is done. You have a whole different set of survival expectations. And those will be determined by what kind of villages can we build over the years, what kind of technology can we pull forward, like electricity, for example. And also modern medicine. We know about antibiotics now. We have a germ theory of disease. It's in the books. So you could have your medieval village and also have a germ theory of disease. And because you have that, then you have modern medicine. And you understand the efficacy of antibiotics. And immunization. So who knows if those things are going to be available in the future. But at least you know that that's a thing. You know that diseases are not curses from a malevolent God, all right? You know that you have to, keep your food clean, and you have to sterilize things, and you probably should know something about pasteurization and pasteurizing the milk, and having refrigerators, right? Or ice boxes, at least. If you're doing ice boxes, where does the ice come from? That's going to be hard to find on a hothouse Earth. Finding ice on hothouse Earth is going to be virtually impossible. But who knows? Maybe there's a source of ice. But if there isn't, you've got electricity, then maybe there's a source of refrigeration. Refrigerators with ice boxes, freezers, freezer compartments. So all the more reason to focus your effort on making that happen. And you don't have to have a refrigerator for every house. Maybe you have a storage area, a building set aside, like a larder, essentially, for the community, where the production of the community is stored for collective use. So you'll have jars of pickled vegetables, right? Pickled carrots, pickled cucumbers, those are pickles. Pickled eggs, that used to be a thing. And you'd have fermentation of their various kinds going on. You'd have someone has a recipe for kimchi for use with cabbage, and so you've got vats of kimchi. You've got kombucha being brewed, and of course beer, right? Why not? How about wine? Are you going to have a vineyard? You could have a vineyard, and if you have a vineyard, you could have a winery. Do you know how to ferment wine? Do you know how to store wine and create palatable wine? Well, figure it out. You could do that. You have a vintner. A vintner is a person who makes wine. You have a vintner. And boys and girls could go learn how to work with a vintner and how to smash the grapes and how to raise the vines and the whole thing. It's just a whole horticulture, agricultural segment. And you may have wine barrels, you may have wine casks, and beer, and maybe even some distilled alcohol, if someone can figure out how to do that. So from your distillation of your wine, you can get brandy. And why would you want brandy? I don't know. You may want alcohol for medicinal purposes, right? For sterilization. So you could have all this technology if you want. You could have all these specialties inside your village, or in villages in association. There might be one village that really gets the wine thing going, but that's too much work for every village to do. So one village really, in addition to having everything else, the gardens and the animals and the pastures and everything else, they really get down and specialize on the wine thing. So that becomes a wine growing region, a grape growing region, and they become a wine producing village. And that's their claim to fame. And then they sell their wines or trade their wines around the region, and everybody can have wine. They don't have to have vines. They don't have to have a vintner. But there's a village nearby that specializes in wine. And there might be a village nearby that specializes in basically resurrecting old technology. And there may be boys and girls both working in that field. There may be boys and girls that go scouting looking for old technology that's still serviceable. So they go looking for kitchen appliances and various things that could be fixed or repurposed, and they bring them back. And so this village is doing that. Maybe this village has several blacksmiths. Maybe this village has shops for winding generators and making generators for generating electricity. Maybe this village has perfected some way of using water wheels to generate electricity, and they can then export that technology to other villages that happen to have water nearby. So you can have specialties, but people in these villages are going to have to figure out how they're going to integrate. There's going to be so much work to do. There's not going to be any shortage of interesting and vital and critical things for people to do. But driving, flying, buying and selling goods, having your 401k and having a job, that's just not on the table anymore. And when men and women don't have that as a fallback, that I can be independent, I have my own house, I have my own car, I have my own 401k and my IRA, and I'm going to do my own thing, and I'll figure out family later, and I'll figure out marriage later, and I have time for all that. And in the meantime, I'm angry, I'm lonely, I'm blaming everybody else for my problems. I can't figure it out, but it can't be my fault because I'm a good person, so it must be someone else's fault. And that's kind of where we are now. That's what we got going on now. Kind of, sort of. Maybe not everywhere. I don't want to paint too broad a brush. But let's face it, there are problems. And they manifest in some pretty horrendous ways. Because out of loneliness comes the blame game. And out of the blame game comes victimization. And out of victimization comes retribution. And out of retribution comes violence. But in the future, when everyone really has to figure out how they're going to pull the village together and how they're going to make themselves vital to the village, how they're going to create that aura around themselves of being important to the collective survival, how they do that is going to be a critical question. And you might have to start dealing with that when you're 3 or 4 years old and mama sends you out to the hen house to collect the eggs. And she will do that because she's busy. And you better not break the eggs, and you better not leave any behind, and you better not get distracted and go down to the creek and throw rocks. Okay? When she sends you to the hen house to come back with the eggs, you better do that. And if she sends her daughter to the hen house to come back with the eggs, maybe she's trying to teach her daughter something about what it takes to make food and how important the chickens are. And the chickens are a big part of our diet, and we have to take care of them, and we have to take the eggs, and we have to use the eggs, and also we can trade the eggs for other things that we don't make. And the mother may make sure that the daughter collects the eggs. And the mother may make sure that the daughter takes the extra eggs into the village and trades them for other things that the family can't make for itself. Like a wooden spoon once in a while, or a wooden bowl, or something else that somebody has made who might like the eggs in exchange. So these gender roles are going to be important, not just because gender identity is so chiseled in stone and so critical, but because people are going to need things done. And a woman who has children is a woman who has children. And she's going to need help. And she knows that her daughters are going to be women with children, because that's how females work. Now, that's how they're going to have to work. They're going to have the children. And the village may not be too interested in females who choose not to have children. That could even be a law. You're female, the way you contribute to our village is you have children. You're a male, the way you contribute to our village is you select a woman, you marry her, you vow before the village that you will take care of her needs and you'll support her and protect her, and then that's your job. Your job as a male is to take care of this woman, and that woman has already agreed to have the children this village needs, and the two of you together are going to raise those children. Oh, and you're going to raise them according to the rules of the village, not just some hippy-dippy thing that you come up with. You're going to have to raise the children a certain way, and the children have to learn to be responsible, and maybe they'll learn to read and write, but maybe not. Responsibility in a village might simply be you have to have a skill. You have to be able to pull your weight. You have to be able to defend the walls. You have to be able to have children, raise children, and take care of the elders, and look out for the security of the community. These are all the roles that have to be fulfilled. We don't need actuaries. We don't need project managers. We don't need graphic designers. Well, we do need carpenters, and we do need electricians, and we need people who can pull the wire and make the generators work and everything else. But your vision for yourself, based upon what was going on in the year 2025, that thing, we don't need any of that. We just don't need any of that anymore. And if you are going to continue to act like that in our village, then you're just a useless eater. Sorry, not sorry. And there might be places for people like that, people who just can't collect the eggs, could never wrap their head around village life. And those people, the best use for them might be to go live in a monastery or a convent and meditate constantly. And it's almost like it's a mental hospital, right? Because you never figured out how to integrate into village life, so you must be insane. I'm just playing this out, okay? Therefore, you must be insane. Therefore, we'll send you to this other place. And maybe there will be things that the monks do, right? They have bees, and they have vines, and they make wine, and they make mead. And mostly, of course, they sit around and pray. But they also do these other things. And they tan leather. And they're monks, and they're mostly just sitting around praying to God all the time. But then they do other things, and the village values the other things. But also the village just needs a place to send people who can't integrate into village life for whatever reason. And so you have monasteries, you have convents, and the people who just can't figure out how to work in society, they get sent to the monasteries and the convents, where they can live collectively with other people who also can't figure it out. And then there's going to be people who just absolutely can't be around other people. Whatever, mental illness, narcissism, sociopathology, whatever it is. And those people get thrown outside the walls. You're in the woods now. You're living in the woods. And if you ever come to our walls and our gates demanding reparations of some kind, we're going to run you off. And if you keep coming and you set fire to our gate and you try to come in, you try to get what you want, well, then you're a brigand. You're a criminal. If we catch you, we'll probably hang you. And then we're done with you. And that's how it's going to be. Village life is just not going to be tolerant of people who think that there's something about themselves that has to be accommodated. And men and women will learn very quickly how they integrate into the community in a way that brings forward the community's survival. Because that's what it all comes down to. It always comes down to the same thing. Are we surviving or are we not surviving? Are you surviving individually? No. What do you need? Okay, we can provide that. Now, if we provide that for you and ensure your survival, you have to work with us to ensure the collective survival of everyone. We focused on your survival, and now you have to help the rest of us. Oh, I see. You're just going to sleep out under a tree. We're feeding you. We're watering you. We're giving you shelter and clothing, and you're just going to sleep under a tree? Okay, that doesn't work. You have to go do this over here. And if you're a male, we have a set of things that males are good at, including carrying water and lifting stones and building fences and cutting trees. And if you think all you're going to do is sit under a tree and you're not going to contribute, well, here's some things that men can do. And if you're a female, here's some things that females can do. So get to work. Find what you want to, how you want to contribute, and make sure you do. And we'll be watching. And that's village life. That's village life. And the people who can't figure out village life, they're parasites. And will the village put up with them? Maybe. If they can play the guitar and sing and dance and entertain people, well, then maybe that's their role, is to be the village idiot. The fool. And maybe the village will tolerate that. That there's this guy that sits out under a tree and strums a guitar all day. Maybe the village will put up with that. I don't know. What if they don't? Well, now you're a traveling bard, right? Now you can go between villages. You've got your guitar, you've got your, maybe a traveling dog or something else, a companion, and you go between villages and you sing and entertain the people, and maybe they throw you a coin or they feed you a couple of meals and you have to go to the next village. That may work out perfectly fine. Traveling bards were a big part of life before technology, because that was your entertainment. The traveling bard, tell stories, carry the news, right? I was in this other village and this is what I heard, and now I'm going to play a song, and then people come on. Well, have you been to that village? How are they doing? And this traveling bards were really important. And there were even traveling troops, right? They would have traveling plays. They would set up a stage, and they would stage their play. And sometimes it was current events. The play could be current events, or the play could be just standard material. It could be slapstick comedy. It could be something really important. And they may do plays about the fall of civilization. Now, these could be really important. So if you don't want to be a carpenter, and you don't want to be an electrician, you don't want to make nails for the houses, and you don't want to shoe horses, and you don't want to shovel manure, maybe you can play guitar and you join one of these troops, and they travel around the villages in the region, and once a year they come back to the village where you were born, possibly. But everyone's going to have to pick something. And what they pick may be derivative of who they are. And who they are primarily and first and foremost is male or female. So ultimately, because everyone's going to have to contribute, and because everyone has a natural set of inclinations, women want to marry and have families, as a rule. They may even be required to marry and have families. That's a possibility. Men are interested in crafts and building and working with other men, and they want to be seen as valuable. They want the pride that comes from accomplishment and purpose. Men are prideful. And women are prideful too. And how do you integrate, and what do you show the community? How do you show the community that you are a valued person? And there'll be lots of things you could do, but you're going to have to pick one. And a lot of the time, the women are going to be expected, like it or not, to have husbands, children, and families. And that puts them in a sphere of influence, which is actually absolutely critical and super important. This is not a compromise on the part of a woman to look forward to a good and lasting marriage, a family of her own, raising her own children, inculcating them with culture and mores, teaching them how to be good people, and then have the community look to you and say, that woman knows what she's about. She's valuable to our community. And in addition to raising children, she's also an herbalist, and she knows how to quilt, and she's also a passable veterinarian, and especially with injuries, infections to animals, she has lots of ways of treating infections, and so she's very valuable to our community. I like the Terry Pratchett books, the Tiffany Aching series. Her grandmother was a wise woman, and she specialized in treating sheep. She was the local veterinarian, and she treated sheep. And most of her treatments involved vigorous applications of turpentine. But it didn't matter. She treated the sheep, and she found the lambs, the lost lambs. And she was Granny, I can't remember her name, Aching. It's Tiffany Aching, her grandmother, Granny Aching, the Aching family. And Granny Aching was famous in the region for her focus on sheep health, lambing, the dropping the lambs, keeping track of the lambs and protecting them from predators, sheep shearing, and that was her claim to fame. And she was honored throughout the region. And Tiffany Aching came along, and she was expected to follow up in her grandmother's footsteps. And the story is the tension she had to deal with in the Aching family, that she had another calling, and that's fine. She made good on that. Tiffany Aching became a witch, and when she came back to the region, she ended up being like her grandmother. Turns out her grandmother was a witch. So, people have different paths, but your path is probably not your own. It's not your decision. And your gender has something to do with it. And your community has something to do with it. And the needs of the community are foremost, primary. And your needs might even be secondary if you're living in a village. And if the village needs electricity, then somebody's going to have to figure that out. And then that's what those people do. And that might run in the family. We might have families of electricians in the future. And they're just working with copper wire, installing outlets, fixing appliances, making them workable again. And this is how it's going to go. And that's why I like this picture. I like this picture because it's trying to combine. I lost a tab here. There it is. Right. It's showing something that I think is going to be critical. We're not going back. There's no need to go back in the collapse of civilization. We need to go forward. That's the smart thing to do. We will go forward into things that look like medieval villages, but we will also go forward into new applications of current technology. New meaning differently deployed, differently managed, less centralized, more distributed, less technological, basically. And the men who climb the poles to run the electrical wires are just village men who maybe at other times are working in the fields. Okay? And the men who are building the buildings at other times are working in the fields, or they're blacksmiths, or they're carpenters, or they're coopers and making barrels. But in this scenario, everyone's going to have to pick a place. And men and women will pick a place dependent on a combination of both what the village expects of them, needs of them, and where they are probably most likely to just naturally fulfill requirements of the village. And men can't give birth. Women can. And once a woman gives birth to children, well, then she's somewhat limited in what she can do after that. And when she has a big family, even more so. But that's a valuable thing she's doing, because she's creating the next generation of workers and thinkers and teachers and healers. And that's how you build a village. And so she accepts that. And that's what she's going to do. And then she needs help. and her eldest daughter helps her, and her eldest son helps her until he has to get into the trades, and he'll be working with his hands and building up, his upper body strength, working with a hammer and dealing with wild animals and dealing with domesticated animals and the things that males are adept at, where you have to be a little bit aggressive, where you have to be big and powerful. And let's just face it, there's a lot of work out there that maybe women would like to do, but they just don't have the upper body strength. Or they maybe they could be trained to do it, and that's great. And if we can train a woman to do a man's job, I really don't like that term, but if a woman can attain the aptitude to do a man's job, trademark, then she can do it. That's fine. But she's going to have to do something. And maybe if a woman is really good at being a blacksmith, she can shoe horses. She can knock a horse in the head and shoe it afterward. She can make nails all day long, faster than anybody else. And she's always making nails, and the carpenters are always looking for nails. And she can work with scrap iron, and she can make anything you want out of scrap iron. Utensils, pots. She knows how to run a smelting operation, how to melt down the scrap iron, how to pour it into molds, how to knock the molds apart and get the things out that people need. And she's really great at being a blacksmith, or really great at being an ironmonger. And so the village doesn't really expect her to find a husband and marry and have children, because maybe there's not many men who want to be married to a blacksmith. So the village says, well, she's a hard worker, she's smart, she's creative. And, there's enough girls in this village that are having children and taking care of that aspect of our survival, and she doesn't have to. And then it may turn out that there's someone who comes to the village and says, wow, you're a blacksmith. I've always wanted to be a blacksmith. And soon they're married and they're running the smithy together. Perfectly feasible. And she's still a blacksmith. And maybe she has a kid, and now she has the kid. She wears the kid on her back, and she works the forge, and she works the anvil. And she's carrying a kid on her back. And guess what that kid's going to do? That kid's going to become a blacksmith. Works just fine. Probably. Maybe. Maybe it doesn't. Who knows? Maybe you can't have a kid in a forge. I don't know. But anyway, that's her choice. So there's a lot of flexibility, but men and women have to choose. They have to choose. And the village will have expectations. But mostly, the village needs to survive. It needs to grow. It needs to add new citizens to its local population. And, some of the male career paths, not trades, okay, let's not call it career. Some of the male trades are dangerous. If you're felling trees all the time and you're using some combination of axes and saws and winches and wedges, you could have a tree fall on you. You can have a limb fall on you off of a tree. I've been a tree feller. I have worked with wood. I know all about that. It's dangerous. It's not dangerous. It's hazardous. And even the equipment can kill you. So that's work for men. Because let's face it, like it or not, men are slightly more expendable than women, especially if women have children. She's not expendable at all. She has to raise her children, keep them alive, and teach them and feed them and clothe them and keep them clean. And that's her job, 24/7, keeping those children alive and moving forward to become citizens of the village. And a man gets killed, well, then maybe he leaves a widow. Well, that's not good. There were often rules in villages or religions where if a man dies and leaves a widow with children, then his brother was expected to marry her and take care of her. Or some other unmarried man, or some man who comes into town looking to set himself up, the village may arrange a marriage. This is your wife now. You're taking care of her. Here's her 3-4 children. And she's a good woman. She lost her husband. Not her fault. Not even his fault. Just shit happens. Diseases, whatever. Animal attacks. War. Or anything, right? A limb falling on your head. Breaking your neck. And now she needs a husband. And you're her husband. And that's how village life would proceed. We have a widow. Can't have that. She needs a husband. You're up. You're getting married. I don't want to marry. Too bad. You're getting married. Oh, and you better not screw it up. Because that's your job now. That's your role in this village, is to marry this widow and help her, to take care of her and make sure her needs are met. And that's your job now. Because she needs a husband. It's not her fault she lost her husband. And you're going to be her husband now. And we're going to arrange this marriage. And you're going to marry this woman. And we're going to make sure this works out. That's village life. And maybe the woman doesn't like that. Although she probably would be, flexible, given her circumstance. And the man may not like that because he's like, I don't want to marry. I want to play guitar all day, but whatever. No, you're not playing guitar all day. Now you're going to be a husband. And that's village life. So the point of this video, being 11th in this series of massive societal change, was to discuss in broad strokes what happens to gender relations and gender expectations and community expectations of genders. I know the word gender is not the one right, but I'm using it, okay? I don't care what people think. Post-collapse, and the collapse is basically inevitable, post-collapse, gender relations and gender affirmation and gender responsibilities will emerge in the course of creating, sustaining, protecting a village. And the village is where all life happens. The lone monkey is a dead monkey. And maybe there'll be traveling bards and traveling troops, but they'll travel between, and traveling physicians, right? And traveling teachers, right? They just make the rounds, a shared resource for the community, and they're going to have to live in these communities. And they're going to need room and board. They're going to need to get paid, possibly, or paid in kind, new clothes, new shoes, new hat, whatever. And, but they're still allowed to travel between the villages, but the villages have to be there, and they have to be successful, and they have to have food and lodging, and they have to have people in the village who can create these things. And the men and the women are going to figure out how to do that, because those are the things that need to be done. And your idea that you're going to go to college and get a university degree and be an actuary, that's just not possible. So what else can you do? Well, sit yourself down and figure that out. And for the people who are adults at the time, when my book takes place, it was 100 days. People who are already adults at the time have massive changes that have to take place up here. Rewiring their expectations. The younger people, which in the book, the younger people have lots of roles because they're young and sort of undetermined. But in the book, I have them playing the role of scouts and diplomats, believe it or not. So they travel between the villages, again, like traveling bards, right? They travel between the villages and stitch together people, discover people, create communications networks. And that's what the young people do. They're scouts. And there's boys and there's girls. And of course, eventually they hook up and they become married couples. And then they stop being scouts because now they have responsibilities. She's pregnant. He has to take care of her and the baby. He has to maybe make a home for the three of them. And then he has to make contributions to the village so he has access to the food and the water and the clothing and everything else. And she's going to have lots of children. And he's going to have to get busy real fast being able to support his family, and so he can't be a scout anymore. But up until that point, the young people who are a little bit disconnected from the adult world because they're not married yet and they don't have families and homes of their own and they don't have responsibilities, they're the scouts and they go between the villages. So that just worked itself out in the book. The really small children, they work in the gardens. They help the women and the men. There's both. Everyone works in the gardens. And what do those small children do? They help pull the weeds. They stay with their mothers. Mom keeps an eye on the child, and the child plays in the dirt, and then the child pulls a weed, or the child herds the chickens, or whatever the child does. But what the child is doing is what children are supposed to do. They learn. They're learning. They're being inculcated with morals and virtues. And that sounds very parochial and very oppressive and whatnot, but that's what children are for. Children are there to learn how to be adults. And they're not going to learn how to be adults who drive and fly and buy goods and have a 401k and have a job. That's not the children. That's not the kind of adults we're going to have. because those things won't exist. Those things won't even be memories at some point. No living person will even have a memory of those things. But they will all, every single day, be expected to survive and to contribute to village life. Every day. From the time you're old enough to take instructions. 3, 4 years old, 5 years old. Go out and collect the eggs. Pull the weeds. I'm pulling the weeds. You sit down right here next to me and you pull these weeds, just like I'm doing. I'm planting seeds. I'm going to give you some seeds. You plant the seeds just like I'm planting. That's what the children do. And then when they become, young adults, they start worrying about, or thinking about, in some cases worrying about, who they're going to marry. That's what's on their mind. And the girls will marry when they reach an age where they can reproduce and be responsible for their own household. And the boys will marry when they're old enough to be able to provide for a family. And there might be an age difference. And the age difference might be 10, 12 years. Because the girl is kind of born ready to do what women do. And the boy may have to learn a trade. He may have to travel around, learn a trade. He may end up in some other completely different village, working for the blacksmith 20 miles from where he was born. And then he meets the girl, and they hit it off, and he marries. And then that's his home. That's where he lives. He doesn't go back home. He stays where her family is, because she's going to need her mother and her aunts and her sisters to help her with all the work that a woman does. And these are the differences between men and women. And these differences will assert themselves. They simply will, which is how it is. And it can sound parochial and oppressive and all these kinds of things, but it's not. It isn't. It's how we do things. And if men and women were exactly alike, and women were as strong as men, and women actually lived independently, they only needed men once every few years to become pregnant and have children, then they'd be like cats or dogs. Not even dogs. Dogs have packs. They'd be like cats, where the female raises her offspring by herself and does her own hunting and defends her own territory and even keeps the males out of her territory until she wants to have offspring. Then she goes looking for a male, and then she's with him for a few days. That's it. And then she goes back to her territory. And if he comes around later and he's sniffing around her den, she runs him off, because he's probably going to kill the offspring or some stupid thing, because males. But we're not cats. And the females of the species aren't as fierce as the males, and the females can't do it on their own. And once they start having offspring, they need the male nearby to help with everything: provisioning, protecting, raising the boys, giving the boys things to do, providing leadership, guidance, dealing with crises, crisis management. Gender relations, responsibilities, collective and individual survival, successful procreation. After a collapse, it's just not going to be feasible for men and women to live apart, or to be lonely, or to plot their own journey, or have their own home or their own retirement. It's just not going to be feasible. It'll all fall apart along with everything else that's falling apart. So I think I've labored that point enough. It's not, if I do a second edition of the book, I will put in an essay on this topic, because it was just kind of obvious what was happening in village life as these neighbors and people who join the community later, as they just sort of naturally figure it out. But I think there is an element of there is going to be some massive societal change. There's going to be a lot of disappointment, savage disappointment. People are going to be amazingly disappointed by what happens to their careers and their education and their sense of worth and value to the community, and their sense of self, their sense of purpose, that they got a college degree and they were going to live independently and they were going to have their own home and their own car and their own everything, live separately, right? And maybe I get married, and maybe I don't have to, and I don't need children. Who needs children? If I want to be around kids, I'll go to the park and watch the kids play, and then I'll go home and watch TV, watch Netflix, right? I cook myself a meal or do DoorDash. I don't even have to worry about it because I don't have any kids. I don't have a spouse. I don't have anything. It's just me. I do what I want to do, and that whole thing is going to go out the window. Out the window. After the collapse of this civilization. Even though this civilization has inculcated those values and those expectations and expects everyone to get a degree and everyone to work for as wage slaves and everyone to be completely fungible, we don't need you anymore. We're going to hire someone else who's cheaper. And we're all been inculcated with those values, and it's hustle culture. And it's making yourself important and valuable to the man and valuable to the corporation, and that's just all completely unhinged. And it doesn't provide very much purpose or fulfillment. And I know women can be fulfilled by things other than birthing children, having families. I know all that. But ultimately, no. No, it isn't fulfilling. And men don't have to be married and having, raising families and being responsible. They can do other things. No, that's not true. After the collapse of civilization, you're going to have to pull your weight. And if you're a woman, that means you have to do certain things. You're probably going to want to do those things, so it's probably fine. And if you're a man, that means you're going to have to do certain things. And if you're a man, you probably are interested in those things anyway. You're going to see other men doing things. You're going to want to be with them. You're going to want to have camaraderie, friends, and hobbies, and all this other stuff. And you're going to extend yourself. And when you get the warm fuzzies, a pat on the back, well done, or that's great. We didn't know that could be done. You discovered something. Now you're really valuable. Or you're going to take up this other thing. You're going to start winding generators. That's amazing. We don't even know if that could be done. We'll start winding generators. Things. We need lots of generators to generate electricity. And you know something about residential electric, and you think you can find copper wire, and you think you can wire our homes for residential electric? Great, you do that. You figure that out. And you'll get a lot of pats on the back and a lot of a sense of belonging and purpose if you're a man and you can contribute to the village life. And then when you get married and you start taking care of a family, people are going to look up to you like you're one of the leading lights. You're an important man in the community. People respect you. And isn't that what you always wanted? Isn't that why you worked out to the gym 6 hours a day? Isn't that why you wanted all the money in the world? Isn't that why you wanted the expensive Rolex watches and the expensive sneakers and you wanted to be the stud monkey at the county fair? Isn't that what you wanted? It was to be accepted and recognized and praised once in a while for your contributions. Isn't that what you wanted? Well, then what you want is village life. Because you will absolutely have a role in the village. And when you make good on that and you contribute to the village's overall survival and quality of life, then people will really look to you. They'll say, wow, that guy, he came out of nowhere. He figured some things out. He really contributed to the community. He learned a trade. He brought a trade to our village from another village. He traveled here with a trade that we didn't even have, and now we have it. He's a big player. He's a main character in our story here. Isn't that what you want? Probably. And you're not going to get that any other way except village life. I promise you that. So I'm not looking forward to the collapse of civilization. No comment. It's this way, it's that way, right? It's going to hurt. It's going to be hard work. Most of us won't survive it. And many of us won't integrate. We won't be able to do the internal work up here. We won't be able to do the work. These videos provide me with material for my writing, so this topic should go into a second edition of the book I've already written, and it will also be a big important topic in the second volume. Is that the one where part 1, part 2? It'll be an important topic in part 2, where people are either struggling with or figuring out how to become critical citizens and contributors in village life, and what that looks like when it works, and what it looks like when it doesn't. So this video is critical to me being able to write that. And my wife is back, so I should end this. Again, the link to the book is in the description. And think about how you could contribute. Think about how you would recreate village life. Think about how we do this. Could you do this? I can do this. I can totally do this. I know how they did this. I can do the electrical. I can't do the cell tower. For all we know, that cell tower doesn't even work. It's just in the picture, right? But could I do this village? Yes, I could do all that construction. I could manage. I could build that wagon. I could build these stalls. I could grow those fruits. I could build these buildings. I could wire these buildings with electrical and plumbing. I can do all this stuff. I'm a savage. I'm an absolute savage. I can do all this. I wouldn't have any trouble integrating into this picture. No trouble at all. And that's where we all need to be, folks. Read up yourself on some medieval construction techniques. Blacksmithing, ironmongery, residential electric, right? Doesn't hurt you to know that. I don't care if you're a man or a woman. Study it. And what if you're a woman and you're electrical? You can do a residential electric. You can install outlets and run wire and do it all safely, right? And well, then you can do this to your own home. No one's going to stop you. You just need the copper wire, the boxes, the outlets, and then you can plug in your own appliances and have electric lighting in your house. And people are going to think, wow, she goes. And then when your sons and daughters grow up, you can teach them how to do it too if you want to. If you want. Although maybe if you're a woman and you have a family and you have responsibilities at the home, you maybe don't want your daughters out running around pulling wire, installing outlet boxes. Maybe you want your daughters home helping you with the chickens. That's a thing. Helping you with the smaller children, the tinies. The eldest daughter, right? She can do that. She can change diapers. She can look after them. She can feed the little ones. She can do all the things. Maybe she can't breastfeed them, but that's the mother's job. And otherwise, she helps in every way she can. She helps with the laundry, help with the food, help with the garden, help with the herbs. And then she can, when she has some spare time, she goes into the village and she takes some of the extra eggs and some of the extra herbs, and she comes back with things they don't grow at the home. Maybe potatoes, maybe a wooden bowl and a spoon. That's what she does. She integrates. The eldest daughter. She doesn't really have time to pull electrical wire. Her mother, though, may have wired the house. Possibility. Maybe the sons learn how to be electricians from the mother. The key is we all have a role. We all need to have multiple skills. We all need to know how to do things, and not just on a superficial level, although that's a good start. Go to Home Depot and buy a book on residential wiring. They'll have 50 of them on the shelf. Maybe Home Depot doesn't have books. Maybe Lowe's does. Or go to Amazon and buy a book on residential electric for idiots. The idiot series, right? I hate that, but that's what they are. Residential electric, residential plumbing, water filtration. Right? Learn how to filter water. Learn how to do plumbing. You can buy a book, you can read a book, and you're thinking, why am I doing this? I'm never going to do my own plumbing. You just might. You don't know at this point. I'm actually really worried about when civilizations are going to collapse. I thought I had years to get my shit wired up tight. I'm not thinking that anymore. We got years singular, okay? Months plural. Yeah, the wheels are coming off. So you've got work to do. I've got work to do. And ultimately, it may fall to us to rebuild, rediscover village life. Be ready for it. Just be ready for it. That's my recommendation. Learn as much as you can. Pick up as many skills as you can so that you can be skillful and valued and necessary in whatever villages you may find yourself associated with. Get on with it.